Welcome back, everyone. Today we are starting Unit 5A. This is all about circles. This is Chapter 10 in your book. We are going to start with identifying and using the different parts of the circles. So first of all, some vocabulary. We have the word circle. This is the set of all points in a given plane that are equidistant from a given point called the center. So remember, equidistant means they're all the same distance. For example, circle O, every point on this circle is the same distance from point O. It's named by the center, the point that every point on the circle is the same distance from. Next, we have the word radius. The plural of this is radii. It's a segment with endpoints at the center and on the circle. So for example, one of the endpoints has to be the center, the other endpoint has to be on the circle. So for example, we have segment AO, segment OB, or segment OC. Those are all examples of a radius for the circle. Next, we have a chord. A chord is any segment with both endpoints on the circle. For example, point P and point Q are both on the circle. If we join them together, it creates a chord. Another example of a chord would be point A to point B. That also creates a chord. A diameter is a chord that passes through the center, and it's made up of collinear radii. So it means it's two radii that are in the same line. So again, this is segment AB. Goes through the center, point O. Finally, we have the word concentric circles. This means that they are coplanar circles, so they're on the same plane, and they must have the same center. So for example, the blue circle, the black circle, and the green circle are all concentric because they all share the same center point. Some things that you should know about circle pairs. Two circles are congruent if and only if they have congruent radii. So for example, if we know that segment GH is congruent to segment GK, we could conclude circle G is congruent to circle J. Or if we wanted, we could go the other way. If we know circle G is congruent to circle J, then we can conclude that they have congruent radii. Remember, congruent circles, they have to be the same size and the same shape. However, for similar circles, sorry, I wrote that incorrectly. That applies to congruent circles. However, for similar circles, these are the same shape, not necessarily the same size. So, since all circles are the same shape, all circles are similar. They can be different sizes, but they're still similar. Okay, let's talk about the circumference of circles. Circumference is the distance around the circle. The formula is circumference equals 2 pi times the radius. So R is equal to the radius. Now, since 2 times R is also equal to the diameter, since the diameter is made up of 2 radii, the circumference could also be written as pi times diameter, because if we multiply 2 times R, it gives us the diameter D. So we can also use this formula, circumference equals pi times diameter. Let's look at an example together. It says in 2005, Roger Federer and Andre Agassi played tennis on the helipad of the Burj Al Arab Hotel in the United Arab Emirates. The helipad has a diameter of 79 feet and is nearly 700 feet high. Find the circumference of the helipad described. Here's a picture of it. I think it's actually really cool, so I wanted to show you this. It's 700 feet high off the ground, and it has a diameter of 79 feet. So all the way across the helipad is 79 feet, and it is about 700 feet off the ground. Now, which one of these dimensions will help us find the circumference? We know that the equation for circumference, we can do 2 pi r, or we could do pi times diameter. They were giving us the diameter, so I'm going to choose this formula, pi times diameter. Now that means that 79 feet is the number that's helpful here. The height off the ground is extra fluff information. You need to know when there's extra information given that you can ignore it. Next, S, remember, stands for substitution, so we'll substitute in 79 for the diameter. So you get 79 pi, which if we plug this into our calculator, you need to use the pi button, so do 79 times pi on your calculator. You should get 248.186. It would round up. So we can answer this. It said find the circumference. The circumference is about 248 feet. So that means that if you measured all the way around the helipad, the circumference would be about 248 feet. All right, I gave you 2 practice problems to try below. For 4A, I gave you the radius. For B, I gave you the diameter. I want you to try those. Pause the video now. Here are the correct answers. Let's do another practice problem together. This time, I will give you the circumference and you need to find the diameter or the radius, or maybe sometimes both. This says find the diameter and the radius of a circle to the nearest hundredth if the circumference of the circle is 106.4 millimeters. Now, I usually like to use the equation pi times diameter for these, because if I use the formula pi 2 times pi times the radius, in order to solve for the radius, you need to divide by 2 pi, but a lot of people forget to put parentheses around this 2 pi. If you do not put parentheses around this 2 pi, your calculator will take the circumference divided by 2, and then it will multiply it by pi. Whereas in reality, you want it to multiply 2 times pi first, and take the circumference divided by 2 pi. So if you're going to use this formula, circumference equals 2 pi r, make sure you do not forget to put a parentheses around the 2 pi if you're dividing that on your calculator. But to make it simpler, I'm just going to use this formula. Circumference equals pi times diameter, and then I'll know that the diameter equals 2 times the radius. So I'll use that next to find the radius. Substitute in what you know. I know the circumference is 106.4 millimeters, so I'll plug that in for C. C stands for circumference. Now, in order to solve this, I have pi times the diameter, so I have to divide by pi on both sides. So I have 106.4 divided by pi. Plug that into your calculator. You'll get 33.868 as the diameter. Now, we can use this answer to find the radius. On my calculator, I am going to keep that as the answer, okay? So I'm not going to type in anything different. I'll just have it still on my screen. Now, I know in order to solve for radius, I'll have to divide both sides by 2, so I'll take the answer that's on my screen and divide it by 2. So all you have to really do is type divide by 2. That should give you that the radius is about 16.934. Now we have to answer it with units. So we'll say the diameter is about 33.87 millimeters, and the radius is about 16.93 millimeters. The units here should always match the units given for the circumference. Okay, on the top of the next page, there are some practice problems for you. Well, just one. I want you to find the diameter and the radius of this circle. Here are the correct answers. This next problem, I want you to try it if you're in my honors class. Go ahead and pause and try that now. We'll go over it in class tomorrow, along with some practice problems on the next page. Otherwise, you can go ahead and move on. All right, finally, I want you to think about this question. Is the distance from the center of a circle to the point in the interior of a circle sometimes, always, or never less than the radius of the circle? Please explain your answer in 1 to 2 complete sentences. That's all I have for you today. Tomorrow we'll be back to learn about some different vocab with circles, including arcs and different angles inside circles. See you then.